Right. Hello, everybody. Today, I have the privilege of being joined by Global BC News anchor Jennifer Palma. Thank you so much, Jennifer, for joining us here today.
Thank you for
As
having
you
me.
know, Celiac Canada turns 50 years old this year. So thank you for agreeing to meet with us and kick off some of our celebrations. In our May magazine, we like to highlight an individual living with celiac disease. And this May, we would like to highlight you and your journey. So welcome and thank you again for joining us.
No, thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. So wanting to get to know you a little bit and know a little bit about you and your celiac journey. So when were you diagnosed with celiac disease and what were your primary symptoms before diagnosis?
Yeah, I was a little bit older, I guess. I was in my 30s, sort of early 30s. I I hadn't felt well since I was a kid, but I always just thought, I don't know, I just didn't eat certain things. I didn't eat pizza, I didn't eat pasta. Naturally, my body just kind of was like, don't eat that stuff. I didn't think of myself as a fussy eater. I just every time I ate that stuff, I didn't feel good. So I would shy away from it actually. But finally, when I was diagnosed, it was bad. I couldn't walk. I was super bloated all the time, but I looked very frail, slim, thin, gaunt, and just not healthy. Like my people I work with, some of my producers would call me and say, "You need to put on more makeup," or just they were curious, like, "Are you feeling okay? Is everything all right?" Because I really did not look well at all. And then finally, that one day at work, I just couldn't stop throwing up. I was by the side of the road and I called them and I said, I can't work anymore. And then a few weeks, and then I thought I had a flu. I thought I had a very bad flu. And I didn't want to get anyone else sick. So I was like, I'm going to go home if that's okay. And they were like, yep, go ahead. um, so I came home and yeah, I couldn't walk. My husband had to carry me up the stairs to get to our bedroom. Um, and I was just kind of incontinent. Like I couldn't anything. I couldn't even keep down water. My system was so done. And so what do you do when you don't feel well? You eat what? Oh, dry toast? Only made it worse. So I went to the doctor like 2 days later. So I thought, this is not normal. And she looked at me and she was like, "Oh, that's not right." And she actually sent me right away for like an emergency scope.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was bad.
When blood work first, you went for a scope immediately.
Yeah, there was no blood test, nothing. It was like, just go. Um, and then when I got the results back, it was like, I'd never really heard of celiac. I'd heard of it. I didn't understand it. I didn't know what it was. Didn't sound good. Like when they called and they said, you have celiac disease. And they said at one point, they said to me, they just stopped counting whatever it is that they're counting exactly. I guess the levels, and because it was just so off the charts. And
So
so at that time, they called and it was actually, it was Halloween. They called and it was dinner time, and around 4:30, 5 o'clock, we were having an early dinner because we were taking the kids out to trick or treat. And I'd made them these really cute little ghost and goblin pastas for Halloween. And I remember sitting there thinking, I don't think I can eat this. So I actually didn't eat. So we went out trick or treating, and I was like, I don't know what I can eat.
yeah.
So yeah, it was overwhelming. And I'd say when you're first diagnosed, and I've spoken even just a few weeks ago um, with someone who was just diagnosed, and they called asking for, just advice and just someone to listen to them with their concerns. And it's so overwhelming when you're first, because you don't really know what to do. Like, what do you eat? Just salad for the rest of my life? No, it's not that bad. There's other things, but it is concerning. Yeah.
And that's such a common thread in our community when you're first diagnosed. It's like that tidal wave comes over you of, okay, how do I cope with this? How do I deal with this? How do I practically now live with this? So that's where definitely the CCA has done so much work. We've got a newly diagnosed pathway, which we've got. So it delivers emails to your inbox to help
Amazing.
people with that education piece on what do I do now? Because that's the first question. Well, what do I do now? What is safe
Mhm.
for me? That is so hard. So were you the first person in your family to be diagnosed with celiac? Nobody else, no other first degree relatives that you know of?
Well, yes. So I was the first one to be diagnosed, but my mom, I'd say in sort of the 1990s, got very sick. The doctors didn't know what was wrong with her. She spent months in the doctors and she just kept reducing to nothing. She went down to 90 pounds and she'd been about 140. So the doctors, they actually were considering exploratory surgery at one point because they just said, we don't know what's wrong with you. And at that point, my dad actually sent her back home to see my grandparents, and she was able to recover there. It was a different diet.
Interesting.
So she came back and she felt better, but she never ate the same after that. And so when I was diagnosed, it then made sense with my daughter because she was very not feeling well. She was just a little kid. And my son seemed okay, but I went and had their bloods done right away, and she is positive for celiac.
Oh, really?
Yes, my son isn't, but I would say that he's a little bit gluten sensitive,
Okay.
I would say.
That's
But my mom, while she was never diagnosed with celiac disease, because she just went on a gluten-free diet and didn't want to go back on a regular diet to figure it out. I would say it actually came from my grandfather, because growing up, I remember him having some of the, less attractive things that celiac can bring on into your digestive tract. So I think it comes from that side of the family. Yeah.
So fabulous that you had both your kids screened, because that's what
Yeah.
we recommend, and discovered that your daughter, so discovering it young so she can,
Yes, grow.
yeah,
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
possible. So that's, yeah. And how is she doing on the diet? Is she, how, if you don't mind talking
Yeah.
about
She's a teenager now. She was about 5 when we had her diagnosed. And she's about to turn 17.
my daughter was 5 as well when she was diagnosed.
Really?
Almost 13 now, yeah.
Wow.
So they're
I'm
well versed in the diet at this point. They're good little advocates.
Oh, she's better than me at times. She's like, Mom, I'm like, what? Oh, right. Okay. They are tuned in. But for her, I was sad at first. I mean, I was happy that I knew,
Yes.
but I was sad because I thought going
Yeah.
to parties and stuff now, she's going to be that kid. But I have to say, her friends, the community around her were awesome. They always had a cupcake for her, or they would, is everything okay? Like, what can we get her? Or I would just send something along, but everyone always tried to make sure that she was included. So it's nice that, between celiac disease and all the other food allergies and concerns that people have, like it's nice that people are considerate for it.
And they'll accommodate for it, which is, I'm always so grateful when somebody says, what can we get Julie? Like, let me know and I'll pick it up. It amazes me, people's kindness. And I'm always grateful for it, especially when they were littler.
Yes.
Now they're going off to the corner store themselves and picking stuff.
Right.
But when they were young, when they were little, it was just so nice that parents were
Lovely.
so kind and accommodating. So for you, what is the biggest barrier that you have with regards to the gluten-free diet, and what do you miss the most since you were an adult when you were diagnosed?
Yeah, I know. In some ways, like when I think of my daughter, I think of myself as a little bit luckier, only because I got to eat all the quote normal, typical stuff. But we're not missing out that much, really. Products have come along a long way. They are a lot better than what they used to be, even just a few years ago. What do I really miss? Really, I was so sick. I don't really miss much. Maybe a croissant. And I have found some decent gluten-free ones. They're not exactly all there yet. But I have every confidence. These bakeries, they're doing some amazing things.
I know the one that you like. We discussed it on email.
It's good, hey? Yeah, I know we're lucky in this area. There's a lot of accommodation for that in bakeries and people who really want to try and get it right and do a great job. But yeah, overall, nothing's really super much. There's usually a workaround for most things.
Yeah.
If people would just use rice flour instead or cornstarch, that would solve so many issues.
So you have such a busy career being a news anchor on Global BC News. How do you manage the gluten-free food requirements on a day-to-day basis? Do you have any tips or tricks for our community?
Yeah, I take food with me all the time to work. That actually was a big concern of mine, especially when I was doing a lot of reporting, because you squeeze in the food thing wherever you can, and then if you don't have the right kind of food, now what do you do? So I always have a lunch
Yeah.
always. But I have to say, I'm very lucky. At Global, they're very cognizant of gluten intolerances and celiac, even like nut allergies, the whole 9 yards. They really do pay attention to that kind of stuff. So there are offerings in our cafeteria
Oh, amazing.
for that. Yeah, they actually do. We used to have a boss who actually also experienced celiac disease. So yeah, it would get, it helped in making people understand. But even when we have meetings or anything like that, especially when we used to be able to get together more, there's always something available for all of us, which is great.
Speaking of the negative, what good things? I mean, other than, I mean, obviously you feel better. Sounds
Mhm.
like you felt awful and you feel better now. Has celiac disease brought anything else into your life that's been a positive?
Yeah, a lot of cool people. A lot of cool people. People find out I have it. And then I get to meet them. Or they teach me, usually is how it goes. I learned something from them. Um, so I would say that's probably actually the best besides your health,
Yeah.
is the community and just people that you meet, who are either experiencing or trying to help you get through it. If maybe it's, just a bakery owner or a restaurant or like a store, etc. Just there's been a lot of wonderful people that I've been able to meet, and then I learned something from them. So what a great gift. That's a wonderful gift.
One thing I will say that about our community is we really do want to help one another because we all understand what everybody's going through. Everybody's symptoms are different, everybody's journey is different, but we all have the same sort of end goal. So it's nice to share, excuse me, those tips and tricks with one another for sure. And it's all led with kindness, which is so,
Yes.
so
Yes. And understanding.
absolutely. So celiac disease has a really, we have only a 15% diagnosis rate here in Canada. So it's a really low. So 85% of people who have celiac disease don't actually know they have it. And they could be suffering, they could be ill. I mean, much like you for maybe, I'm not sure how long before you were actually diagnosed when the gene was triggered. So
Mhm.
we do see this extended period of time, on average about 10 years in Canada it takes to be diagnosed with celiac
Wow.
disease. And people struggle with their health and they're wondering what is wrong. So how do you think we can raise awareness of the signs and symptoms of celiac disease to have more Canadians diagnosed and feeling better?
Mhm. Definitely advocacy, even like social media campaigns. People do pay attention, and there are on those screens all the time. I do think I agree. There's a lot of people that are out there that are undiagnosed. If I have to hear one more person say to me, I think I have food poisoning, I'm like, well, you might, maybe legit. I'm no doctor. But it's one thing if you have food poisoning as a one-off. It's another thing if you tell me for several months in a row that, oh, I've got food poisoning again.
Yeah.
I think it's a different kind of food poisoning. So I think, yeah, getting the word out, usually social media is the easiest, the news, even having events, like if there's, you know, some kind of, maybe, I don't want to say, just for example, like a jog or a walk event for something like that, or
Yeah.
there's all kinds of things that can be done. I can't really think of a million of them off the top of my head right now, but something that would kind of make people go, oh, and there's a lot of misunderstanding, as we've discussed in celiac disease. People think, oh, it's like an allergy, like an EpiPen kind of thing. Like it's an autoimmune, a little bit different. We won't die from it, thankfully, right? But maybe you could, I guess, if
Long-term
ultimately,
consequences, yeah.
if you don't have the nutrients, right? But it's just not a happy existence. So I think, yeah, getting the word out there is very important. And so for me, I tell, I don't just walk up to people and go, hi, I'm celiac. But, for discussing food or whatever, I might drop it in there, just because, yeah, I want people to know and to
Conversation
understand it a little bit. But yeah, if you can get it into the hands of people, literally on their phones, um,
is the best way to do it.
that would probably help a lot because people don't understand it. Or also, I think people don't want to know. They don't want to be diagnosed with it, right? Because they're like, well,
That's
what
a
am I
very
going to
good
eat?
point. We had a campaign last year called Could It Be Celiac?
Mm.
And, we've kind of shifted that to be, could it be gluten? Because, it could be non-celiac gluten sensitivity or gluten intolerance. But just that asking that question, could it be celiac disease? Because not everybody knows that it's really, the screening is just a simple blood test.
Yeah.
So it's not, you don't have to, I mean, you are obviously very ill for your doctor
Yeah.
to go directly to the endoscopy, which is incredible.
Mhm.
But for people who are kind of wondering, oh, I wonder if I could have celiac disease, really, they just need to know that initial step is just a regular old blood test. So I always say to people, the next time you're going in to get your iron checked, or your hemoglobin level, or your hemoglobin levels, or
100%.
your get that celiac disease screen thrown in there, because the jab's happening anyway. So rule it out. So as a dietitian, I'm always saying to people, let's just rule it out.
Yeah, no, you're right. And it is so easy. If you're going in anyway, it's not an extra needle.
So
You
easy.
do it all the same, one jab usually, depending on what you need.
Exactly.
Yes.
So as a news anchor, you have a platform to discuss um, lots of important topics for our community. And last year, I had the privilege of speaking with you about the rising cost of food for our community,
Yeah.
because we know that food costs for our community are so high. It was at point in time we were speaking about 183% more expensive. Now some products are upwards to 400 or 500% more expensive.
Oh,
It's
easy.
absolutely ridiculous. Um, so this rising cost of food has really affected our population. As a dietitian, I've seen people opting to eat gluten as
Oh,
a way of actually feeding themselves, because the gluten-free food options are too expensive.
mm.
So what can we do you think, to raise awareness of this issue?
Um, Definitely government needs to be involved. At the end of the day, I would say they need to be lobbied. Um, it does make it more difficult. I mean, they just brought in all the big grocery execs, for example. I don't know that we got anywhere with that, but those questions were there. So yeah, it's a tough one because those grocery store prices are not going to come down anytime soon. And for gluten-free stuff in particular, really not going to be. I don't know if it needs to be a regulation thing where gluten-free food is seen similar to quote regular food, or if there's like a certain cap that's put on it, because I understand some place, to do it properly, they need to have a separate system, facility at times, room for sure, where there's can't be any cross contamination. So I get that there are extra costs. But once those things are built, I'm kind of like, well, I get the initial costs, but then they're built.
Yeah.
um, and when you think of the fields with the oat, with the cross contamination from wheat and all that, I get that's kind of, but you can also get oats that don't have cross contamination. And I think the land's all the same. I'm not a farmer, so I don't understand what all needs to be done. But I think once it's planted and grown, intended to,
Yeah.
how is that really any different? Maybe it's the sorting process that I don't understand, that where they really need to, again, up their game. So there's so many like avenues that need to be considered, I guess, from industry to, can government play a part in this? It comes back down to people getting diagnosed. As the population increases, there is more power behind a campaign from the population saying, hey, I think we just all kind of eat it up, literally. We just take it. Because what else are you going to do? There's either you make everything yourself from scratch, but even buying the flowers, etc., they are prohibitively expensive for people. And when I do grocery shop, I quite often think about the food banks. Well,
Yes.
people who utilize a food bank, they are already in dire straits. And if they have a gluten situation or any other, how much more expensive? Like, how do they access that? I don't. I've been to couple of food banks and had some discussions with them actually about this. And some do make an effort to try and have sections within the food bank to accommodate people who have food allergies or gluten intolerances or celiac disease, which is awesome because that population really, really worries me. The ones on the cusp and the ones who can't afford it at all. What do they do? And then you just get sick and your immune system goes down. So you're perpetual, for me, before I was perpetually sick. It took 2 years for my intestine to repair itself and for me to feel better and not get sick with every single thing out there. So it's more than just your economics and your health and the cycle that you're on.
You bring
So
up
yeah, it's very concerning.
you bring up a really important point about with increased diagnosis comes more numbers. And when there's more numbers, there's more people buying the food, and that might actually bring down some of the cost as well.
Mhm.
So that's interesting. So again, just kind of driving back to that diagnosis.
Yeah.
We need to increase the diagnosis. So on to a more fun question.
Mm.
Travel.
Oh, yes.
He loves to travel, but we find some places harder than others, and airlines can be very challenging. Do you like to travel, and do you have any travel tips or places to go that you've had really good success with?
I love to travel. I mean, really, who doesn't? I think most people do. There'd be a few that I know that don't, but overall, I do. Traveling. I do always wonder, what am I going to eat? There's a few places that I honestly think, if I go there, what am I going to eat? So I usually do look to see what is a typical diet wherever we're going. If in North America, I feel pretty confident that I can find something. Outside the borders of North America, I do get a little bit nervous. I mean, you can always fall back on salad.
Yeah.
That's always what I think. I'm like, well, I guess it's going to be salad. I might take I always take snacks with me. So like a granola bar or something, especially for my daughter, even though she's, getting closer to 20 now, she's voracious. She's always hungry. So we need to have food at the ready all the time. But yeah, places to go. Well, around the Lower Mainland, we're very lucky. We are so lucky in the Metro Vancouver area and in BC that there is such a good understanding of celiac disease and gluten. The offerings around here are awesome. So if wherever you are in the country, come visit us. You can have a really nice food tour. It's really great. But when I leave, I usually do go looking to see I'll pick a, what's a popular restaurant in whatever city we're going to go. Then I look at their menu if they have it posted, and I kind of look at it and go, okay, is there a couple of things that we could choose from there? So I know at least there's one place I can go to outside of the grocery store. I don't always want to cook every day on vacation either. It's a vacation. I'm getting away from that, right? And so that's kind of what I do.
Well, you have the benefit, and I read this on your profile, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you speak 6 languages.
Yes.
So you have the benefit of being able to actually communicate with people in many different countries. Yeah. Whereas people, like if I was traveling to Spain or Italy, I don't speak either language. So it would be a challenge for me to understand. Right. Now I understand both of those countries actually do gluten-free food fabulously.
They do, yeah.
They've got a huge amount of research that comes out of Italy. Some of their gastros are amazing. But it would be harder to navigate menus in a foreign language for me. So you do have the benefit of speaking 6 languages. Is very beneficial.
I do. It's my hobby. I do. You know what I do too? I also learn before I leave words related to celiac disease so that I can at least show them.
And we have travel cards as well that people can take places that have that kind of thing on it.
Good, yeah.
Is there anywhere that you've had that you feel that has been above and beyond a wonderful place for somebody with celiac disease to visit that you would recommend to our community?
Yes. Well, if you could get to it, I know we're pretty far from it, Nicole, but Montreal. There was a bakery there. Oh my word. I can't remember the name of it now. It was in the old town, the historic area of Montreal, and beautiful storefront, right? It's cute. You walk, oh, it's so adorable. You walk in, and I could not believe it was gluten. I thought they were lying. I'm like, no, this is not a thing. And my husband and my son had eclairs. We all had an eclair because I'm not even an eclair person, but you had to eat this because they actually did have good croissants. Really? They had closest to I've ever had when it came to gluten-free. That was the only time I thought, oh, this is a gluten-free bakery. because the croissants weren't exact, but so close. Everything was light and fluffy and just
Amazing. I now
lovely.
want to go on. I now will be planning my next vacation
Yeah,
to Montreal.
off to Montreal we go.
So, on another topic, 68% of those newly diagnosed with celiac disease are iron deficient. And currently in Canada, it's not mandatory for gluten-free flour to be to be fortified with iron, folic acid, riboflavin, niacin, and thiamine, like their gluten-containing flour counterparts mandatorily have to be fortified with. Um, and this leaves our population vulnerable for further deficiencies. We're going into it iron deficient, and then none of our food is fortified with it. So it makes it really challenging.
Mhm.
So the Celiac Canada is meeting with the government of Canada in May to discuss this topic. Do you have any suggestions for us to help make this advocacy effort a success?
They need to take in the numbers and the stats and stuff. They need to understand how it's shocking, really appalling that I think they need to tell you guys why.
Yeah,
Why is it not included? That doesn't even make any sense just because it's not wheat flour. Like it doesn't I'd like to think that it was like something they overlooked, that they just maybe they thought it was included. I don't know. But it because it really doesn't I can't wrap my head around that one. Why things those are basics wouldn't be included. We fortify our milk, we fortify all kinds of things, cereal, etc. So why wouldn't you do this for a population that's particularly already hurting literally in their gut and that needs the extra help in being able to retain nutrients? Because as we know, things just can fly right by you if you are not paying attention to your gluten-free diet. So anywhere that you can get those extra bits is awesome. Like you need it.
I think that's an excellent point for us to just ask why.
Yeah.
If it's not cost, which it might be cost, but why is it not fortified to the equivalency of their gluten-containing counterparts? It doesn't make any sense. I agree entirely. So stay tuned. We'll see what they say on the Hill
Yeah.
after May.
I can't
So
wait.
last question, wrapping this up. What helps you to live confidently and successfully, as we can see you're doing with celiac disease?
Well, diagnosis, I think for sure.
Yeah.
Knowing that there's an association like the one here, Canadian Celiac Association, and knowing that there are lots of people, at least in my corner, that I can turn to, and wonderful people that I've met, that we can discuss how are you feeling today. I really do like talking about it because I hope somewhere along the line it helps someone, because the way I felt, oh, it was awful. And if anyone else is out there feeling like that, I just go get the blood test. Just go do it. Just go do it. The kind of neat thing about having celiac disease, I survived it. So far, so good. Knock on wood. Knock on wood. It does make me think about my diet constantly. And I don't know about other people, but for me, I feel like I am a lot healthier just in the choices I make. I'm very mindful of it all the time. And I've passed it on, I hope, to the kids, to my children, and even my husband, and even like the extended family. Because now when they start, oh, Jen's coming over, I was like, oh no, here she comes. What are we going to feed her? But they're all getting better. Like they get it. So, and they're so kind, and everyone tries to accommodate as much as they can.
Yeah.
So it just makes you really understand your body, which I think is a gift for myself anyway. Because what's that ache, what's that pain? You really start to pay attention to yourself and what do things mean. And I think if you understand how you operate, you're able to better operate in the world, because you know what your limits, boundaries, etc., and how you can help others.
That's a great point. Learning that mindfulness about our own bodies is a really good point. I've never heard somebody describe it like that before. Thank you for sharing that with us. Well, it has been an absolute joy and my privilege to chat with you today. Thank you for sharing your journey with us and for giving us some tips and tricks and your thoughts on certain topics. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you very much. And I hope a lot of people are able to gain something from this, but also get that diagnosis if they need.
Yeah. So thank you so much. So to hear more from Jennifer, we will be writing this interview, or I'll be transcribing this interview in our main Celiac Canada magazine. So anybody who's watching can look up that on our website. And otherwise, I hope our community has a wonderful Celiac Awareness Month. Thanks so
Yep.
much.
Thank you.